Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to look at an absolutely incredible ancient military tactic that literally changed the course of history. I mean, we're talking about a maneuver so audacious, so brilliantly engineered, that when it was executed perfectly, it was completely unstoppable. In fact, it's so potent that elite military academies are still studying it today. So get ready to see the battlefield in a completely different way as we unpack the legendary Crescent Formation.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core premise we're unpacking today is a tactic so genius it genuinely destroys entire armies. And this isn't just about moving soldiers from point A to point B, you know? This is about intense psychological warfare, precise geometry on the battlefield, and a sheer devastating power that completely neutralized opposing forces. We're going to break down exactly how ancient armies used this to pull off some of the most stunning victories and, well, devastating defeats in history.
Section 1. The Ultimate Military Trap.
So to really understand how this works, we need to completely reframe how we think about military lines. You shouldn't view this maneuver as just a standard battlefield formation. Instead, think of it as a high-stakes, deadly trap that's designed to lure the enemy into a false sense of security before completely swallowing them whole. The Crescent Formation, which you'll also hear called the U Formation, basically involves stretching your battle line so incredibly wide that it literally wraps around the enemy. I want you to visualize that shape on the battlefield for a second. Instead of a solid, straight block of soldiers colliding with another straight block, one army deliberately bends and stretches into a massive U-shape. And here's the crazy part. Stretching this wide meant the lines were sometimes dangerously thin. We're talking maybe only a few men deep, creating this physical pocket that the opposing army just marches straight into.
Now you might be wondering, who actually used this? Well, this was primarily a favorite tactic for the underdog. Armies that were vastly outnumbered used the Crescent Formation as this really bold way to level the playing field and actually win against impossible odds. But, and this is a massive catch, it carried a really strict, unforgiving set of prerequisites. You absolutely could not pull this off with a mediocre fighting force. No way. To stretch your battle line that dangerously thin without it snapping, you required significantly better trained soldiers than your enemy. It demanded just absolute, unflinching discipline from every single soldier to maintain that stretched line under the utter terror of active combat.
Section 2. Mechanics of the Crescent. The Battle of Marathon.
Okay, abstract concepts are great, but to really grasp the genius of this tactic, we need to see it executed in real life. Let's look at our first historical case study, where this incredibly dangerous trap was set and sprung to absolute perfection. The year is 490 BC, at the legendary Battle of Marathon. On one side, you have this massive, imposing Persian army. On the other side, a significantly smaller Greek force led by a general named Miltiades. Facing these overwhelming David versus Goliath odds, Miltiades decided he had to try something completely crazy. He was going to use the Crescent Formation.
Now, the initial phase of Miltiades' plan looked like complete suicidal madness to the enemy. Why? Well, because as the Greeks got close to the Persian archers, they didn't just march forward in a nice, steady, shielded line. Instead, they actually started running at full speed directly toward the enemy. Just imagine sprinting at full speed while wearing up to 50 pounds of solid bronze armor. That's exactly what the Greeks did, and it's exactly why the Persians thought they were watching a literal suicidal death wish. But it was all part of the trap.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the precise physical execution of Miltiades' genius trap. Step by step, Miltiades purposefully weakened his center line and heavily strengthened his outer edges, or flanks. As they ran at full speed and violently collided with the massive Persian force, that intentionally weakened Athenian center didn't hold its ground. Actually, it slowly gave way, acting as perfect bait. It drew the Persians deeper and deeper into the middle of the line. And then, while the center was falling back, those heavily strengthened Greek flanks surged forward, crushing the Persian wings and snapping shut like giant pincers.
And just like that, the trap closes. The Persians, who literally just moments before thought the Greeks were committing mass suicide, suddenly realized the horrifying truth. They were entirely enveloped. The sheer claustrophobia and sudden terror of being completely surrounded from the front and the sides triggered a massive psychological break. The Persians totally panicked, abandoned the fight entirely, and immediately ran to their ships in a desperate attempt to flee the battlefield. It was a total, sweeping victory for the outnumbered Greeks.
It's an incredible success story, right? But what happens when it backfires? We really have to remember that this brilliant maneuver was, at its core, a massive, high-risk gamble. It required everything to go exactly right. So, what does it look like when the discipline isn't there and the trap fails?
Section 3. Disaster at Thymbra.
So now, we're going to explore the catastrophic, devastating consequences of attempting this highly complex tactic without perfect execution. Because when the U formation fails, it doesn't just result in a minor setback, it results in total annihilation. Let's travel back in time a bit further to the year 547 BC, at the Battle of Thymbra. Here, the Lydian army, commanded by King Croesus, found themselves in a really difficult position. Thinking he was about to pull off an absolute mastermind move, King Croesus ordered his troops into the U formation to envelop his enemy.
However, huge gaps ripped open between their troops. Remember earlier when we talked about the absolute discipline required to stretch a battle line wide without it breaking? Well, the Lydian army's discipline basically vanished. As they attempted the complex movements required to form the trap, the soldiers just couldn't maintain the line. The fatal error occurred right there on the dirt. The line simply broke, and the entire formation fell apart before the trap could even be set.
And this just cascaded into an absolute nightmare for King Croesus. The formation devolved into complete chaos. Instead of a highly coordinated trap, it was just a disorganized mass of vulnerable soldiers. Unfortunately for him, he was facing Cyrus the Great, who instantly spotted the blunder, and Cyrus didn't hesitate for a second. He capitalized on the chaos and ordered his men to attack the Lydians directly through the gaps and from the sides. The would-be trappers were instantly turned into the victims, and the Lydian army was entirely annihilated. By failing to execute the maneuver flawlessly, they literally handed their enemy the perfect opportunity to crush them.
Section 4. High Risk, High Reward.
It really is the ultimate double-edged sword of ancient warfare, and this brilliantly illustrates that delicate balance by contrasting our two historical examples side by side. At Marathon, a highly disciplined center intentionally fell back to trap the enemy. But at Thymbra, disorganized gaps accidentally ripped open and ruined the line. Marathon saw strong coordinated flanks crush the enemy's wings, while Thymbra saw those exact same flanks collapse entirely into chaos. It is a razor-thin line between a genius trap resulting in total victory and a fatal blunder leading to complete destruction.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial question we're left with is this. Is a brilliant military strategy ever worth the risk if it relies entirely on flawless execution? Whether you're looking at ancient battlefields, modern business strategies, or even high-stakes decisions in your own life, there is always this timeless, dangerous gap between a perfect plan drawn upon paper and the chaotic, terrifying reality of executing it. The Crescent formation could absolutely win the day and destroy an entire army, but as history shows us, it was always a roll of the dice as to whose army would actually be destroyed. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the tactics that shaped our world.